What do you usually watch on television?
Do what?
What do you usually watch on television?
Uh, Usually, almost always PBS. I have 4 different PBS channels, so it's usually Channel 9. And I watch either PBS or Discovery or sometimes I watch the Food Network.
Are you interested
But
in food?
almost always it's PBS
Yeah.
or
You have a little food hobby or?
Food Hobby.
Yeah.
I like to eat.
So, first I was wondering, when did you first move to the Castro?
I'm going to say either the late 50s or early 60s. I don't really remember.
So, where did you originally grow up?
I was born in Columbus, Ohio, and I lived there until I was drafted into the Army. Then when I got out of the Army, I lived in New York City for about a year. Then I moved to Los Angeles with a lover, and because I couldn't find a job there, we came to San Francisco and arrived here on a weekend, and it was raining. And I think it rained for 3 months, and I loved it. I arrived here, I think, on Saturday, went out the following Monday, and found a job.
What was that job?
It was in the data processing division of Industrial Indemnity Insurance. I worked there for 17 years, and suddenly one day I was fired.
What was San Francisco like in the 50s?
Actually, I thought it was very exciting, much more so than it is today. And I really I can't explain, other than looking back on living here then as opposed to living here now, which I love it. I'd never move anywhere else, but it was more exciting. For example, in gay life, you would never go out to a bar without a jacket and a tie. And most of the bars had entertainment, piano or whatever, and it was very social, going from bar to bar to bar.
And why wouldn't you go out with a jacket or a tie?
I'm sorry?
Why wouldn't you go out with a jacket or a tie?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. What was the reason for the jacket and the tie?
Because it just wasn't done. That was, in that time, that would have been like going to the opera in a pair of Levi's. If you were out in a bar, you were in a jacket and a tie. Slacks, jacket and tie, or a suit and tie.
So was that even in the gay bars? Everything was a lot more formal?
I don't think it was looked on as being formal. It was just a period, for example, that you never went to work without a hat, a suit, and a tie. It's just the way it was at the time. And
You said you like it more than you do today. What are some other elements that you?
Well, probably because I was younger and more into the gay life. It was exciting.
What were the bars like in the 50s and 60s? Had the Castro been around yet, or?
When I first moved here, the word Castro didn't mean a thing to me. At that time, I lived on Telegraph Hill, and Polk Street was apparently then what the Castro is now. I mean, it was the place to go. That they had most of the gay bars. The waterfront had quite a few gay bars, and the waterfront at that time was the waterfront, full of warehouses and train yards. Most of the workers on the ships that came into port, they would hang out on the waterfront, so that's where the action was, so to speak. It was just fun. When I first moved here, the first gay bar was the Pendulum. The only gay bar, to my knowledge anyway, was the Pendulum. That I remember when I was living on Telegraph Hill, I had a friend who lived here in the Castro invited me over for dinner, and it was so remote at that time. I remember saying, "Well, I'll come over on one condition, if I can spend the weekend." It just seemed like another city. But you know, the more I started coming over to the Castro, I realized that it really wasn't that far away. And of course, at that time there was no underground, and the streetcars were still running. And a lot of the activity even then was in Oakland or Sausalito. And you could take a train which was actually like a streetcar from the terminal building and go to Oakland. Well, that streetcar just so happened to stop right in front of a lesbian bar called Pearls. So Pearls became very well known. Even at the time, it was still a suit and tie type thing. And it was such a gradual shift over that, you know, looking back, I couldn't tell you what day or what month or what year it started. But then people started hanging out in slacks, and then Levi's came on the scene, and little by little people wearing leather came onto the scene. But because of having my business and spending so much time of my business, I seldom ever went south of Market. So I primarily hung out in the Castro, and well, even before moving here, there was a lot of, the gay scene was in North Beach. There were a lot of gay bars in North Beach, and at that time I was living on Broadway. As a matter of fact, I lived in a new building right outside of the Broadway tunnel when you come from Polk Street to North Beach. And there was a very famous restaurant which was called the Paper Doll, which happened to be owned by somebody I became friends with, so I spent a lot of time there. And it was a very nice bar. Of course, gay life at that time was not out in the open. Most of the times, to find a gay bar, you would go by the address, because there were no signs in the window or signs outside. And a lot of times you'd go in by a side door, so nobody would see you going in or out. I don't know when the bars started outdoor advertising, like the name of the bar, or for example, when I first moved here, the Twin Peaks was still the Twin Peaks. It was not gay. It was a straight bar, and there were no windows. Then when the two lesbians bought the bar and put windows in, it just opened up a whole new world. I mean, all of a sudden, the Twin Peaks was the place to go. At that time, I was operating my grooming shop on Sanchez Street and market called the Barking Lot. Well, it just so happened that the two girls that owned the Twin Peaks were also two of my customers. And as were a lot of other people, well, for example, Harvey Milk and Armistead Maupin were cut, well, their dogs were customers. But that's about the only connection I had with, actual connection with the gay bars, was the fact that I knew the two girls that owned the Twin Peaks, and then my friend that owned the Paper Doll, he opened a bar on Castro Street. I may be wrong, but I think it was called the Jumping Frog. And anyway, all of a sudden there was a lot of gay bars. I remember one time my sister and her husband came to visit, and they arrived to me unexpectedly, and it just so happened that my friend where I was living, who lived up above me, was having a birthday party, so he invited me up. And sometime during the course of the evening, my sister and her husband arrived, and they were ringing my doorbell while my friend was going out down to his car, and they saw them ringing the doorbell, and they said, "Oh, are you looking for Chuck?" I said, "Well, he's upstairs." They said, "Go on up." So they went on up into this wild gay party. And they immediately fell right in with the crowd.
So were you out to your parents and your
No.
sister and everything?
I never felt any necessity to come out because everybody seemed comfortable with everybody. I don't recall any time in my life that any member of my family ever questioned my sexuality. I always told friends of mine that I think my parents wouldn't have recognized a fairy if one flew by them. No, they knew all of my parents knew all of my friends, and it was nothing for them to openly encourage me to invite them to dinner or whatever. I was never bothered with my own sexuality. I just wasn't. I've always been me. In high school, I think that there was maybe, I noticed a little whatever, but it wasn't enough of a problem to bother me. And I remember that, for example, when I was drafted, that most of the guys that I went to school with were also drafted, and we were all going to the same base. So that particular trip on the train, I started to say it was unpleasant, but I don't remember it actually being unpleasant. It might have been uncomfortable. The first morning in camp, I remember the first sergeant. The first sergeant, we were all lined up at Reveille, and he asked if anybody knew how to type. Well, it just so happened that. Anyway, I ended up as the company clerk, and all of a sudden I had a lot of friends.
Or
I'm sorry?
were you just stationed in the U.S. when you were serving in the military, or did you go abroad?
No,
Were you a clerk?
I was the only one out of my unit that went to Europe, and the rest of them went to Korea. At the time, I had a friend that I met when I was growing up, who was stationed in Munich working for the State Department. For whatever reason, I wrote him a letter and said, you know, do you think there's anything you can do? Well, I have no idea what he did or if he did anything, but all of a sudden I was in Germany.
So were you out in the military, or was it still?
I've never been in.
Yeah.
Yes, I was out, I don't know if you want to go in. I was stationed at Fort Knox. You may want to cut this part out of the film, but I'm going to tell you anyway. The bus station at Fort Knox was so notoriously, was such a notorious cruising place to meet other servicemen or other people that had driven down from Louisville to cruise the base. And the rumor was that the post commander was well aware of it, but he let it go on because it kept most of the servicemen on the base as opposed to taking their wares into Louisville.
Were there a lot of similar places like that, even in Europe too? So it seems like obviously the military knows these things are happening. They just turn
Of course,
the other way.
of course they know. I mean, that's what's so two-faced about the military.
Came about in the
I
90s.
think it's absolutely criminal. I read the paper every day. I watch the news, and to hear of the government spending thousands of dollars to train people, like for example, in the School of Languages, and then to suddenly find out that they're homosexual, and I think all along they knew they were homosexual. I can't, I don't walk down the street waving the rainbow banner, but I know that I can, even in a crowd, I can zoom in on people that I feel are homosexual. I think it is criminal that the government crucifies those people as they attempted to crucify me. Anyway, getting back to Germany, I was stationed in a little town called Lingries, which is about 30 miles south of Munich. And at one time it was a training camp for stormtroopers, Nazi stormtroopers. And then the US government took it over. Well, anyway, I think there was about maybe 1,800 people on the base. I'm not sure how it ever happened, but all of a sudden this was during the McCarthy era. And all of a sudden, I was involved in a homosexual purge. And the only thing that I can think of is one of my barracks mates I think he got caught. And then it's the old, do you know anybody else who might be gay? And that's how I think I became wrapped up in it. So I just decided that I wasn't really having fun in the service. So they said, "Are you homosexual?" I said, "Yes." So anyway, I'm shuffled off to a hospital well, it was a convent which was turned into a hospital in Munich, into the homosexual ward. And, I have to go back. I was being interrogated by this captain who to me was like Casper Milk Toast. Do you know Casper Milk Toast? It's an English character that has no backbone. For example, sometimes during the interrogation his wife would call him and it was, yes, honey, this, and yes, honey, that, and then it's back to me. He said to me, he said, tell me something, Roseberry. I have to act this out. He said, can you think of anybody else on this post that might be, I said, queer? That's it. Queer. I said, yes, I think you are. And he got so mad that he had a crystal ashtray on his desk. He threw that at me. Fortunately, I ducked. I said, and this is the truth, I said, you ask me? I said, I think you're as queer as batshit. I said, that's how I got here. And he screamed to his orderly, he said, get this person out of here. It's the last I ever saw him. So anyway, I was put up for an undesirable discharge, which to me didn't mean anything because I was looking forward to getting out. Oh, I had my own security guard that went with me from Munich to Bremerhaven. I'm not making this up. Anyway, this guard suddenly appeared on the scene, and we became friends. And I asked him, I said, he said he was here to escort somebody back to the ship in Bremerhaven. I says, I know. I said, it's me. He said, you're gay? I said, careful.
I was wondering, how long did you have your dog grooming shop at Sanchez and Larkin?
27 years. At that time, the neighborhood was up and running, and it was, I mean, there was activity all over the place. Influx of people from other neighborhoods, and people coming in from other cities, and it was almost 24-hour action.
Was there different age groups in the neighborhood at the time?
It seemed like the people that I knew, there was no segregation of age, never came into it. I think, like, well, I don't know. I had friends that I've always had older friends, and even today I have younger friends. I have become aware of the fact that certain people, and there will always be certain people that think, oh, you know, if you're 25 years old, you've got one foot in the grave. God, you won't live to be 30. Age conscious?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. But
Actually, if you could phrase that to me.
that doesn't bother me because I don't know many people older than I am. Well, I'm only 20.
Yeah.
I don't think that I have personally experienced ageism, but I'm sure I have. If I have I've never let it bother me. The age span is varied, and because well, for example, if like the Fulton Street Fair or any of the street fairs, I mean, you see people from minors to very elderly people, and they all seem to be mingling.
Do you think there are a lot of assumptions that younger generations of gay men make about older generations?
You see, I have to revert back to when for example, I didn't come out to gay society. I was brought out to gay society, and one of the first things that I was always corrected on is, don't be Nelly. So I never turned Nelly. I don't think. And I don't think that younger people have that sort of thing, that somebody is, I don't want to say somebody's telling them how to live their lives, but gay life to me is like family life. You see, people always refer, well, do I have family? I have people that are related by blood, but I don't consider them family. Most of my relatives, if they were to step up and ring the doorbell, I wouldn't know them. They wouldn't know me. But I do have family, and that's the people that I have met, and we've become friends, and we've become a family. I don't think younger gay people have that, because number one, they don't have a family to begin with, because some parents have children they absolutely don't want children. Well, a friend to me is somebody that you don't have to see every day, but when you see one another, it's like you just saw them an hour ago. I've lost friends, they passed away, but I still know people that I knew when I first moved here.
I was wondering, how did the Castro change from like the 70s to the 80s?
It was sort of like somebody threw open the door to the asylum. You know? All of a sudden you started seeing, for example, you'd start seeing people in cowboy hats and cowboy boots and spurs. You don't see somebody, at that time you wouldn't see somebody that looked like they just walked in off of the ranch, walking down Martha Street. You know, it became like a big costume party. Little by little, people started leaving their coats and ties at home, and sometimes they almost left all of their clothes at home. And even that was exciting. You know, it was something new. You suddenly wake up one day and you're walking down the street and you realize that there are a lot of gay people here. For example, I've lived here 30 years. I never assumed that because somebody lives in a certain house on a certain block that they're gay. For example, it used to be that the telephone area code 9411, or the zip code 94114, that was a gay neighborhood. I'm sorry?
When was that true?
94114?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I live.
Okay.
That's the Castro neighborhood.
Okay.
I don't assume that because I'm talking to somebody in a coffee shop or in a bar, I don't assume that if you're here, you're gay. I don't assume somebody is gay unless they tell me they are, or I have a sexual relationship with them. You know, quite frankly, I don't care. You know, if people befriend one another, and I don't think it should matter.
How has your perspective changed over the years of the Castro and kind of just the gay community within the Castro?
Because I own my own business, and my business took up so much of my time that even the people I talk to today, now that I'm retired, they think that, I mean, they mentioned people, places, and things that I have no knowledge of, because I was concerned with running my business. So I wasn't out and about in the gay life every day. And even now, I have very little knowledge, for example, of South of Market. I don't think I could take you directly to any of the bars. My part of the Castro has been my life. Everybody mentions back to the AIDS, and I was very aware of AIDS in my shop, and all of a sudden, people all around me, you know, had AIDS. It became not a very festive neighborhood. You know, all of a sudden, it was almost like starting a big bonfire to burn all the gay people. The national news and the neighborhood people, and even most of the people in San Francisco, and probably a lot of people elsewhere, had compassion for sick people, you know. People 16, 17, they have absolutely no idea of how AIDS started, and they don't care. Gay life to me is, I don't understand how it can be so enjoyable to most young people, but I'm sure it is. When I was growing up, it was just, gay life was so exciting. And I don't find it very exciting now. That doesn't mean that people much younger than I am don't find it exciting. Well, it segregates people to different bars. I mean, this bar has an age group, that bar has an age group, that bar has another older age group, and then that bar, all ages. It wasn't that way when, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I mean, people went to bars, you know. And I don't recall going to bars that I ever looked around and even stopped to wonder how old somebody was. I mean, they were having a good time. Everybody else was having a good time. Most younger people look for somebody their age, and I did too at the time, but I think they're missing out on a lot. I don't find them exciting today. that I did then, because there was always an air of mystery about them, because you never knew who was gay and who wasn't. One of the most fabulous gay bars, well, I'm not even sure at the time that it was considered a gay bar, was the Black Cat. And the Black Cat was known all over the world, and it was the type of bar that you could go in and somebody might sit next to you and you turn around and it's Rock Hudson sitting there, referred to as a very bohemian bar.
I was wondering if, say I'd never been to the Castro, like I'd never seen it, how would you describe the Castro to someone who has never been to San Francisco or to the neighborhood?
I wouldn't have to call it a gay neighborhood because everybody knows it is, or everybody thinks it is. Well, I had mentioned that my sister and her husband came to visit, and my brother-in-law and I went from here down to Calamarca, which is not very far, and we walked in front of the Badlands. And this is like in the 60s, early 70s. On a Saturday afternoon, it was packed to the rafters. And all this commotion, and my brother-in-law said, "Jesus Christ," he said, "what's going on in there?" He said, "Let's go in and have a beer." I said, "George is a gay bar." He says, "I don't care, let's go in and have a beer." I mean, it was packed. Everybody was having a good time. He had a good time. I've never had to explain it to somebody.
Do you mind if we walk a little?
No.
And I'll ask you some more questions.
Sure.
Actually, I'll put the mic up. And this is where you would take your dogs and stuff?
Yep.
That's nice.
Every morning.
When did your dog pass away?
About 3 or 4 years ago.
Ever thought of getting another? Or?
I've had 5 dogs.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this is where
Oh, wow.
a mountain climb. Matter of fact, it's listed in the Sierra Club handbook.
Oh, really?
How are ya?
Good, how are you?
And he used to come by here every day walking his dog.
This young lady is doing a video on the Castro.
Yeah. Generational differences among gay men who live in the Castro. So Chuck was nice
Cool.
enough to
Yes.
let us
This is
interview
April,
him.
and this
Yeah.
is
Anka.
Anka.
Nice
Yes,
to meet you.
nice to meet you.
April.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I don't remember that tree was growing there.
yep. That was big. It
I
came down.
remember the day it blew over.
Yeah, yeah. It came down with there were kids playing here, and they heard something and
Yeah.
they ran.
Oh, so no one got hurt.
Nobody got
Oh, that's
hurt,
good.
but it was like my daughter, when we go through the woods now, she's like, is the tree gonna fall?
Well, it's not a good instinct. They just run out of the way.
Yeah.
You still have a lot of homeless people here?
No, this summer has been pretty mellow.
Yeah. Is that older guy still here?
No, he died.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, and we got him identified and everything. It was a little bit of a
He
chase.
died here?
He died right in front of the door
Oh, really?
on the weekend, and we actually dedicated the mural on the other side to him. There's a mural when you go out that way.
It's a nice little park.
Yeah.
I love this mountain over there. I'm surprised there's somebody out playing tennis.
Is this tied to the park or is this private?
No, public park.
Oh, wow.
There's another tennis court right up the street. Yeah, we would come through this park and then go over here. Huh? This is where they did their business. This used to be St. Joseph's Hospital up there.
But it used to be a hospital. When did it change?
I think in the mid-60s, 70s. Nice neighborhood.
Yeah. It's nice and quiet.
Huh?
It's quiet.
It is.
Nice.
You wouldn't think you're only 3 blocks from Castro Market. Well, tell everyone I'm still alive.
Thank you. It's gonna be a warm day.
Yeah, it's
already
a
is.
nice video that I did.
Oh, for the
Over here,
graduation.
the little children.
Oh, that's cute. When did you do that for them last year, or?
You know, it's been, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. They had a Halloween party,
Oh, okay.
nighttime party.
Oh, nice.
That was fun.
So how did you meet Ron?
Actually, I met him at Starbucks.
Oh,
We just started talking, so he sort of became my mentor.
that's great.
That's right.
Ha 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 ha!